Following Meyer-Billener's brave act of defiance in the September of 1942, in which he killed SS Oberscharführer Max Bialas, collective acts of violent resistance from the inmate population of the camp were largely subdued until 1943. This was largely due to Franz Stangl and Christian Wirth's reforms in the camp structure, allowing for permanent work details to be formed, instead of cyclically executing all of the prisoners and then replacing them with new ones. While this did eventually sow the seeds of destruction for the Treblinka SS in the long run, it did prevent another Berliner incident from occurring for the remainder of 1942. So, while the inmates of Treblinka itself were largely cooperative with the SS until the summer of 1943, arriving deportees were not so always. As has been mentioned before, some of the transports that arrived from the Bialystok region were troublesome for the SS, with small groups of men, or individuals, punching or kicking the SS and Travnikis as they got off their transports. However, no transport was as problematic or as aggressive as what I refer to as the Kelbasin rebels. In the December of 1942, a transport of roughly 2,000 Jews arrived from the Kelbasin collection camp near Grodno. In this transport was a disproportionately large number of young men, which the Treblinka SS had already anticipated could cause them problems, as young men are, generally speaking, the most likely to fight back if push comes to shove. Anticipating trouble, the SS decided to lock up all of the other inmates into their barracks prior to the transport's arrival, with the exception of the Blues, who worked on the platform, and the Reds, who would transfer their stolen belongings. When the Kelbasin deportees disembarked, they asked their brethren working on the platforms if they had arrived in Treblinka, but the Blues, who had been given strict orders not to communicate with this transport, remained silent. As per usual, the deportees were quickly brought to the transport square and ordered to undress. The first few groups from the transport obeyed these orders and ran down the tube towards the gas chambers. Although they sensed tension, the SS faced no genuine threat until they attempted to liquidate the final group of Jews from this transport. Given that these Jews had the luxury of time to take in their surroundings, lots of young men in this group had likely assessed that the rumours were true, that they had in fact been deported to a death camp. Their brethren's silence on the platform, as well as the fact that their camp seemed rather small, considering that there were lots of them, convinced them to act. What exactly happened next was detailed by Kalman Treman, one of the prisoners who received this transport. There were many youths there. Some of them began calling out to the others not to listen to the Germans and not to undress. A great riot began. The Germans opened fire on the crowd. The SS men, with Kurt Franz at the head, beat the men, women and children indiscriminately. We stood at the side and witnessed the scene. Germans and Ukrainians were stationed on the roofs and began firing into the crowd. We heard an explosion. It seemed that a Jew threw a grenade in the direction of the shooting, and we saw a seriously wounded Travniki was evacuated from the scene. During the struggle, young men began attacking the SS and Ukrainians, punching, kicking and stabbing, as some had managed to conceal knives upon their person, smuggled in when they entered the camp. Other people from the transport joined them, and fled to various sections of the camp, attempting to escape. Rioters were, unsurprisingly, shot on the spot, with the others being forcibly herded towards the gas chambers. Even as the group approached the chambers, people continued to resist, by punching, kicking and screaming as loudly as they could. The Travnikis shot people in the corridor in an attempt to intimidate the remaining Jews into the death chambers. Yankiel Wiernik, who was stationed in the extermination area during this time, remarked upon the following. "We were locked into the barracks. Suddenly, we heard noise, yells and shots. More shots. We didn't move from our places. We waited impatiently for the morning light. We wanted to know what had happened. The next day, the extermination area was full of murdered people. During work, the Ukrainians told us that the people from the transport had refused to be taken to the gas chambers. A tragic struggle had then developed. They destroyed everything in sight and broke the crates with gold that stood in the corridors of the gas chambers. They grabbed sticks and anything they could get their hands on and began resisting. But the bullets cut them down. In the morning, the yard was still full of the dead and the instruments they had used to defend themselves. They fell in battle. The rest were thrown into the gas chambers. By dawn, the whole thing was over.